Hey guys, Bird Dog John here. I want to go through some, hopefully just a video that will become irrelevant really fast. But right now we're having keyboards going into clients' hands, and when they power them up, they go to the IP configuration screen or the model info screen on the camera, and the unit goes to keyboard initializing, where it reboots. This is a known issue. We have a fix for this. Don't worry, your keyboard's not faulty or whatever. It's the conversation that's happening between the NDI chip and the baseboard inside the camera. So there's just a little bit of updating that needs to happen. We can walk you through this. Now, the first thing that we need to do is make sure that our NDI baseboard in the NDI keyboard is up to date. This comes from our Bird Dog firmware update website. If you go to the firmware site that's on bird-dog.tv, go over to support firmware updates. You're going to see, scroll down, you're going to see a keyboard update that will be, that'll give you a number. You're also going to see, near that or under that, or perhaps in the future in the same folder, that will be the baseboard update for the keyboard. You need to get that baseboard, or at least be sure that that baseboard is up to date. So it's a bit of a get both of the files if you can. It's really critical that we do this. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to format our USB drive. And if you haven't seen this video on how I do that, I'm going to include it below. Pause this video, go down and watch the video on how to format the USB drive. Then what you're going to do is you're going to plug your USB, well, it'll be plugged into the computer. You're going to drag the .bin file from the baseboard download onto the root file of this, which means nothing else should be on the drive. It should be relegated to just a few megs. Put the bin file on our USB stick. And then once that's done, you can remove it from your computer, preferably Windows, because that's how I know this works. And we take the USB, we line it up with the actual USB port that is on the keyboard, okay? So when we do that, we plug in the USB, and we, in theory, would have this plugged into power, and the keyboard is PoE, so we can use a PoE switch, plug it into our keyboard like so. Then when we go to turn it on, we're going to hold down the two black knobs that are here on the side of the board, okay? Up here, these two, above the joystick or right near it. You're going to hold them down together, and then you're going to turn on the gray little power switch, or the silver switch. Hold that down and watch the LCD screen when you power on the board. What's going to happen is you're going to see something that says firmware update, and it'll be pretty quick. It'll happen pretty fast because the actual bin file is not that big. So it'll be pretty fast, and then the board will boot up. All right, if you've done that correctly, and we kind of have to assume that you have, and there's no way to verify it if you can't get into the model info page, so we're going to move ahead as if that has happened correctly. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this keyboard and we're going to plug it in directly to our computer. Now, the keyboard defaults, when on factory reset, defaults to 192.168.0.100 and sometimes 100.100 depending on the firmware update. So most of the time in this scenario, that what we're experiencing mostly is the default is 0.100. So we've got the baseboard up to date. Now we got to get into the keyboard and update the firmware, because that's the problem, is the firmware on here doesn't match the firmware that's on the baseboard. So we're going to plug the IP port and this cable that's plugged into the IP port directly into our computer's NIC card. And it's preferable that you use a Windows 10 machine for this, and it's preferable that you don't use a USB dongle, so that you use an actual Ethernet port to do this part. Now, you downloaded the firmware from there, and that's great. I'm going to show you from our website. I'm going to show you how to go and change your Windows 10 static settings on your NIC card, okay? I'm going to jump over here to my desktop just to show this through. I've opened Control Panel, and if you don't know how to do that, we just open Start and type in Control, and Control Panel is there. We click on Control Panel, and it will open this little screen. Now, that yours might look a little bit different, but what you're looking for is Network and Internet, okay? And we're going to say Network and Sharing Center, and I see that I have two Ethernet cards online. Now, my computer has multiple NIC cards, and so yours probably won't. You might have a Wi-Fi card and a hardline, like an Ethernet port. We want to find the Ethernet port, whichever one that is, and we want to log into it. Now, to see all of my NIC cards, this is going to be really non-impressive, but we can click on Change Adapter Settings. And if we click on that, it shows all of my physical and virtual NIC cards on my computer. And I know that the NIC card on this computer is called Ethernet 2. And there's a way to figure that out, but most of you will have one, maybe two NIC cards. We need to select the card that for the actual Ethernet connection that we plug this cable into. We need to select that one, double click, and it will open a little property screen. And then we select IPv4, and then we change our static settings to, we would click here to use the following IP. I'm going to change it to 192.168.0.123. If I hit the tab button on the left-hand side of my keyboard, Windows should naturally fill in this subnet mask, and this is what it should be, 255.255.255.0. I can hit OK, and I can hit OK. Now I'm all the way out. Now I'm going to power my keyboard with the wall adapter that it came with. And what that's going to do is the keyboard might request an IP address, but it's going to fall back to its fallback address because it's not going to be assigned an IP address. And so we know by default it will fall back to 192.168.0.100. Really, you don't need to change this ever on any of our devices, by the way. Leave the fallback addresses as they are because that will help when you need support. So we're going to power this up, and then it's going to take us into the actual program. So I'm going to take my Ethernet cable and I'll plug it into my computer. Give me 1 second. All right, so we're going to power up. We're going to take the actual power adapter that came with the keyboard, and mine's all wrapped around here, and plug this into a power supply, and then I'm going to power up the keyboard. Now, you don't need to see the keyboard do anything, but what you do need to see is what happens on the NIC card. So watch my screen. When I turn on the keyboard, it starts talking over the network. Information starts actually being requested through the NIC card itself. So the keyboard is initializing, and you'll notice on the screen that now it says unidentified network. Some of you might get a different readout. It will toggle back and forth a couple of times until the keyboard fully boots up. Unidentified network is fine in this case. Sometimes it will say, do you want to join the network? In that case, if Windows says that to you, you want to say yes. And we're just going to let the keyboard finish booting up. Now, my keyboard is set to DHCP, and so it's going to ping and request to get the IP address that it needs. But it's not going to get one. And so hopefully it will fall back to the fallback address. Then it is a matter of remoting into the actual keyboard and checking out the firmware update for this unit. So let's see here. Whoops. A little typo here. Give me 1 quick second. I want to get to the web UI to show you how this is done. And I'm doing this all in real time so that you can see it happen live on my screen. Properties. Say okay, okay, okay. Whoops. Still typo. Okay. I can now get to, I can type in 192.168. My default is actually 100.100 because I'm up to date. I can type in 192.168.0.100 and I can get to the web UI, which now looks like this. I'm in a fallback static setting, okay? This should happen to you even if you're having this reboot issue. So we got to get back to the static settings. So your NIC card needs to show that you're on the 0. something network, 192.168.0. something, and then we can gain access to the web UI this way. So the default password, if you get to this point, is bird dog, unless you've changed it, which if you haven't gotten into the web UI, you haven't changed it yet. And now we can go over to system, and we can say system update. And we're going to go and navigate to where we downloaded the firmware, not the baseboard, the firmware for the keyboard. And we're going to upload the FW file. So the .fw file is the one that you want to update. And in this case, you're going to want to get the latest. And so update the latest to the keyboard. Don't worry about maybe you've missed an update or iteration, what we do is we overwrite the entire thing. So don't worry about going to 1.95 or going from 1.06 to something else. Get the latest update from the website and then put the FW file here and hit update. What's going to happen is you're going to get a little Linux screen, typically, that will show the update running. And depending on the keyboard and a few things, it might take a few minutes. It could take up to 5 to 10 minutes. In the rare chance that you don't get the little readout screen, but it says that the connection timed out, just step away for a few minutes. Step away, let it run for 10 minutes, and then come back. And when you come back, all you need to do is refresh the page. And it should take you to this. This is what you I'm sorry. It should take you to this screen, back to the login screen for the keyboard. If you, after the update, if you get here, you can assume that the update worked. And the way we verify that is we type in our password again, we go to the dashboard, and the update should have updated this firmware information right here on the bottom of the screen. So I'm running, as of today, the latest firmware for this keyboard, and I can verify that on the dashboard. Okay, now to fix the issue that we're having then with the IP configuration stuff is I want to make my camera nice and big again. I'm going to shut this down, and on the keyboard, I want to power off the keyboard with the little power button, okay? So I'm going to disconnect the power from the keyboard. Then I'm going to take a little paper clip and I'm going to insert it into the factory reset button, which is right here next to the power port and the power button. So a little factory reset button. I'm going to hold this down. Actually, I'm going to probably turn on the board, unplug it from the power supply and everything. Turn on the board so that it doesn't power on, doesn't have power yet. Take my Ethernet card or my Ethernet cable, this guy, and get ready to plug it in. Then I'll hold down the factory reset button, and then I will plug in the cable, which will power the board from my switch, okay? So I'm going to hold down, I'm going to plug in, and then I'm going to power on the board. And when I power on the board, it should show factory reset on the screen, okay? And what that does is it wipes all of the configurations, it redoes the boot sequence, and then keyboard initializing comes up with the proper setup. Now we can verify if things worked. So the first thing we do is press setup, and then we type in our password, which by default is 4 zeros. Then we go to keyboard settings and click the LR direction knob. We go down to model info and click that LR direction knob again. Model info is on page 2. Now check to see if it reboots. It should read back what the IP address is, which is probably 0.100, and it should tell you that the baseboard is 0.0.9. That's the latest as of today, end of 2020. When you get that, that's good news. Now we can go exit out of that menu, scroll up to IP configuration, click the LR direction knob to select, change the static settings to DHCP by using the knob next to the LR, the zoom speed knob. Change it to DHCP. Click the UD direction knob, which is the zoom speed knob. Click it. You should see a little plus symbol show up in the bottom of the screen. Scroll down to exit, and then exit, and all the way out to the main screen. Now, turn off the keyboard, unpower it with the button, and then turn it back on and wait. If you have an NDI network that is DHCP enabled and is 255.255.255.0, the keyboard should get an address. If it doesn't, plug it into the computer like we did when we were getting into it statically, and log in to the web UI the same way. Make sure that your firmware is up to date. Go in and look at the network settings, maybe see if it's still stuck in static. If it is, on the network page, you can actually click on the network tab in the web UI and change it to DHCP from there. And then hit apply and then reboot keyboard and see if that does it. If you're still having problems after all of that, please reach out to me at help@bird-dog.tv and we can certainly troubleshoot things a little bit deeper from there. But if it comes back with an IP address on your NDI high performance network, then you can click the search button and search your network for NDI bird dog cameras that are on your network. All right, I hope this is helpful. There's a lot to type out every time somebody has this problem, so I thought a video might be helpful, and that will get you squared away with that whole process. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care of yourselves out there. We'll see you soon.